opinions as well. So we'll go once down the table again. This doesn't need to be a hash, I don't think. Yeah, I'm just giving you some ground rules because I'm not gonna spend an hour. So if you wanna speak twice, we'll do the once, and then I'll give you a second supplementary, and that's it. So be concise with your comments, and we can move on. Okay, so, Waring, making a motion. You want that? No.
Motion that council give third and final reading to road closure bylaw 18-1078.
Okay, thank you. And discussion. Brad?
So you said start at the end?
Oh, I could. Okay, Lana, Councilor Hamel?
Go ahead, you start. I start?
I can
Sure.
start, I can start, doesn't matter.
I could get rock, paper, scissors up here, but we'll just.
Yeah, based on legal advice that we were given, it looks like we have no alternative, for not proceeding with this. As I said in the last meeting, I'm not happy with it. I don't think it benefits our residents, especially the area C. But legally, we need to proceed with it, so I will be voting in favor very reluctantly.
Councilor Hamilton?
I'll echo Councillor, I think you just called me Councillor Holiday, didn't you?
You may have.
I could.
I'll echo Councillor Holiday's, you know, the legal opinion was pretty clear, but also that being said, I think that we do need to remember this agreement or this bylaw goes back originally to 2007. That's when the original bylaw was approved by council of the day that, you know, was also involved in the area structure plan and the agreement, the original agreement between the three parties. So it's unfortunate for this council to be working with documentation that's 12 or 15 years old and trying to understand and work our way through it. I think that we've done a lot of digging and we've asked a lot of questions, and I'm comfortable at this stage in supporting a motion to approve third and final reading.
Councilor Rupp?
Yeah, of all the motions that came before us since I started this 2 years ago, I find this the most troubling, you know. We're always elected to do our best for the residents of Turner Valley. And when I look at this agreement, I don't know if that really does it for me. I think it is not in the best interest of the town of Turner Valley, and it has extremely negative consequences for the residents of Royal Lake. That's my opinion. That said, as you said, it's a legal agreement, and I think it needs to be honored. So the land transfer, when I look at that, I mean, the town has given up over a kilometer of 66-foot right-of-way, beautiful paved road once. We get a narrow strip of land, and it's significant, I'm sure. It says the same acres basically, but half of it's on a cliff, so it really doesn't count. But that's another thing. So I don't really see much value in that, but I mean, there is value in the top land for sure. Fortunately, I don't know who was representing the town that time, but I wouldn't really want them representing me, I have to say, because I think that was not, I would say, not in their best interest from my point. We still have to, if we give this land, well, when we give this land away, I think it's kind of where it's at. When we give this land away to the golf course, which is in a duly agreed agreement, then we have to go on bent knee to say to the golf course, would you mind signing an easement so we can get some foot traffic over the golf course? Thankfully, we work with a golf course that are good corporate citizens and have been very easy to negotiate, and they mentioned it to us last time, so that'll be an advantage. But, I also have talked to many residents up there since I came back in 2009 when I came, but more 10, 11 when I got on the roads, they were all upset about that road from the very start. And when I look back at the history, I think there was always a feeling they never really had their voices, they were never really heard. They had lots of concerns, but nobody ever listened to them. It was kind of an agreement. So it just sort of got railroaded through, is what I gather from them. Now that's their perspective, and everybody's got their own perspective. The golf course has theirs, town, whoever's represented us has theirs. Historically, however, Royal Lake was the most prestigious area of our town. Ironically, the people that lived there and the companies they represented were instrumental in building that golf course. And here we are, the current residents can't even drive on a road that's existed for how many decades to go through the golf course? That really doesn't sit very well with me. They can't drive and probably won't be able to walk. So, that really hurts. I think we have to reflect on that matter. Here you are, the people live in Royalite probably for almost 100 years. They were instrumental in building the golf course, and they can't even travel on a road that's been in existence forever. So, I don't know where that came from. At the end of the day, it's a legal agreement. When the horse is dead, dismount.
Thank you, Councillor Rapp. Councillor Gordon.
Yeah, I think we're of one mind as a council that this has put us in a very difficult position. Lesson learned from this as a councillor is when agreements are in place and contracts have been made, to move forward in a timely fashion rather than try to correct something over time. Legally binding documents, we must move forward with it. We've learned that. I wish we could revert back to what it was prior. Being historical doesn't suit us well in this position. So we're gonna be moving forward in a very tenuous position of upholding a contract, and that's what our responsibility is.
Thank you. Councillor Waring.
Oh, you can't speak.
You can't really talk.
Yeah, my concerns I spoke about at the last meeting is basically the access through the golf course, pedestrians, foot traffic, bicycles, prams, wheelchairs, etc., etc. That's been the only access for people that live south of the river to easily walk through to Black Diamond. We are now a environmentally friendly town. We have a motto that resembles that. We've got a lot of elderly people that live up in that area whose one main form of recreational pursuit is walking. And I'm in full agreement that this is a legally binding contract, but I also would like to see us as a council and an administration work swiftly with the golf course to provide an alternative route so that it's up and running, not in 10 years' time or 15 years' time like this has been, but up and running before the start of the 2021 golf season. I can see that we can't do it this year, but certainly we could have it up and running by next year. And I would hope that the golf course, in their infinite kindness, will permit people to continue to use the road at their own risk until such time as this new pathway system is installed.
Okay, thank you. And I would just have to reiterate the exact same sentiments as the rest of council, that it's a legal binding contract. All conditions have been met up to this point. And for us to turn face on that would not look favorable for any other contracts in the future. So I'll be voting yes, based on all the information that we have. And we look forward to working, if it does pass, with the golf course in any future endeavors and whatever we can do to increase green space for our citizens and all the beautiful things that come with it. So that is it. Any other further comments from council? Okay, we have a motion to accept option 1 as outlined by Councillor Waring. All in favor? All opposed? And motion's carried. Thank you. And you could record that, but we got a video. It's okay. Okay, thank you. Old business, Arrowhead Park Stage 1. This is exciting. We have a delegation from the PRAC committee, is that correct? All right. Are you sitting for this as well?
Mr. Mayor, it's an administrative request, so administration will be presenting. I do have the support of PRAC members with me in front and behind.
Ladies, would you like to sit up here? No. You're good? Okay. All right, sounds good. Okay, Mr. Malinka, then I don't need to say much more. Why don't you lead the public in on your overhead here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So yes, before you, we have a report which is presenting options with regards to Arrowhead Park, and in particular what we're referring to as stage one. As I've alluded to, we have some PRAC members both in front of me and behind me in support of what we're bringing forward in the next two agenda items. So in 2019, Council directed administration to work with PRAC to develop a concept plan for a new multi-purpose recreation area that's being referred to as Arrowhead Park. A staged development approach is the most efficient and effective based on the resources and budget available year over year for the town of River Valley. So with that in mind, stage one of Arrowhead Park will entail the construction of the access road as well as a parking lot and some required signage. Walk you through just quickly through the map here, the plan. So we need to first off get access to the site. That will open it up and bring attention to the site and allow us to work in subsequent phases for the other aspects or other amenities that are being suggested. But first and foremost is to come off of the Calta with an access into the property and run along the boundary. The suggestion now, the original plan concept was to take the parking, or the driveway, excuse me, and then bring it all the way down to the bottom corner here where my mouse is flashing. We do have some budget restrictions as we're trying to take what we have available in the capital budget for 2020 and apply it to both this project and another one I'll speak to in a little bit. So what we were looking at when we were getting into a bit more detailed concept design, if you will, was getting the road into the property and then putting a smaller parking lot at this point, at this location, which is at the end of the day use area and at the top of what I always refer to as an escarpment, a ledge that looks down into the lower benchlands. When we move into the future, depending on staging, we may expand that driveway further to the south and put another additional parking lot, which will make things a little bit more easily accessible for those who want to go down into the lower area, as there's a former road, if you will, that's there. So, Council approved $100,000 in their capital expenditure in 2020 to go towards Parks and Rec initiatives. Development of the new multi-purpose recreation area was one initiative that found support with PRAC, as well as town residents, and that was evident through a series of public consultation and open houses that was held, as well as some online survey. Another initiative supported by PRAC and the public was expansion of the existing pathway trail system in the town. However, due to the proposed budget for this stage of development versus funds available in 2020, administration believes that the Parks and Rec staff, the Public Works staff, would be best utilized to construct the access road and parking lot as opposed to contracting out the project. So essentially, we believe we have the capacity in-house to do the access, do the road, do the approach, and make sure it meets proper standards, as well as the parking lot in-house. If we contract it out, it's substantially higher. For some of you who may remember, it was approximately $150,000 estimated if we were to contract that part of the work out. Granted, the parking lot was a little bit larger and further down, but still the estimate was $156,000. We believe that we can do stage one in-house for the most part for approximately $55,000. This would leave us approximately $45,000 remaining out of that 100, which would apply to a proposed pathway trail system that I'll speak to again a little bit later. So the initial scope of the project was what referred to as stage one, would include the survey and marking of the property boundaries, excavating the soils and relocating on property. Again, keep our costs down. If we can keep all the materials on site that we move, that will reduce costs significantly. And if we're thinking a few steps ahead, it also may allow us to use some of those materials on other aspects of the park facility, whether it be a pump park or whether it be other pathways, what have you. So the objective would be to keep our costs down, to try not to take anything off site if we can help it. Construct road access, as I've alluded to, and a parking lot which will accommodate approximately 10 to 15 vehicles, as I showed on the plan. And then some more technical elements with regards to hauling in the aggregates and the landscape fabric, as I call it, to drop down to make sure it's designed right. The intent would be is to go in and do it right the first time, so it's set up for an asphalt surface at some point down the future. We don't want to go in and do a really cheap job with regards to putting in an approach and a road and a driveway, or parking lot, only to have to rip it up in 5 years if we want to go to an asphalt surface, which is probably most effective down the road, but maybe years down the road. Additional purchases, if there's still funds available, would be for benches, additional signage and garbage receptacles in the vicinity of the parking lot. So again, the parking lot would terminate or be located at this location, which is kind of the entrance into the park. It would help with the day use area, that would be in a subsequent phase, the pump park and then the dog, off-leash dog area and the beach access. The benches and the garbage receptacles, if there's money, like I said, we'd put a few of those out by the parking lot to invite people, because once the parking lot opens, we'd like to bring more exposure to the site, which then will bring more ideas on what other activities or amenities we can put on the site moving forward and bring back to council for consideration, speaking on behalf of PRAC as well as the administration. So town staff and town-owned equipment will provide the bulk of the labor and greatly reducing our capital costs. Materials and amenities would be the primary expense incurred by the town on this project, and administration would work with PRAC and committee members in soliciting donations where possible. And that's we've had discussions with PRAC along the way from the get-go. Is where possible, we'd like this to be sort of a grassroots initiative at the park, focusing on a natural setting, natural elements across the board, but also engaging volunteers where possible. Soliciting sponsorship, donations in kind, whether that be something as simple and hopefully, if anybody's hearing, aggregate gravel for the site. Even if that's just to haul it in for free as opposed to having us to haul it in and pay. Another component with regards to signage and benches, as well as look at opportunities to have the benches donated throughout the site. And one of the key components for the first phase is proper signage. But what we'd like to do and have consideration for is not only have a trail map sign that'll have a map of the park and all the amenities located and some additional information that may be relevant, you can see it at any trailhead, but also have part of that sign or another piece of that sign to accommodate a sponsorship board. That way we can make sure that we recognize fully those who have contributed to the park as it evolves over time. So some of that pressure we're putting on PRAC to help us with on the fundraising side of things, as well as working with PRAC on getting in there in the spring if we're moving forward with this project to do cleanup of the site and engage volunteers, plus also be a great way to bring recognition to the future park. With that in mind, for you have two options for consideration. The first option being that council allocate $55,000 approximately from the budgeted $100,000 capital budget for 2020, excuse me, towards the stage 1 development of Arrowhead Park. Alternatively, option 2 is that council provide alternate direction to administration. Staff's recommendation clearly is that we seek council's permission, authorization to allocate approximately $55,000 from the $100,000 to go towards the stage 1 development of Arrowhead Park. I do suggest approximately $55,000 simply because we'd like to have a little bit of room to move between the two projects, but we think we can do it within that ballpark range. If we were to be maxed out or limited on a certain amount, we'd obviously be capped and have to work within those parameters. But that concludes my presentation. So obviously option 1, support for stage 1. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Councillor Rapp.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that council allocates $55,000 from our budgeted amount towards stage 1 development of Arrowhead Park.
You stole Wilkie's thunder. That's why you were gabbing me. He's poking at me. Look at me. He said, me.
It's very seldom that Councillor Wilkie gets beaten
Oh,
to the
it's
punch.
horrible. But I'll give him first comment.
Oh, I was gonna say I got it.
Meant to be a Jeopardy contestant.
There you go, Councillor Wilkie.
Thank you, Mr. Malenka and administration for bringing this forward, and thanks to the PRAC members who are in the audience supporting this as well. It's been a great process of engagement and collaboration within that committee to bring this forward. The first thing I would point out is this, one of the big strategic objectives that we have is to be a destination community. River access is key to that. This provides river access on the other side of the river that we don't currently have. It does it in a way where we're leveraging land that the town already owns. We own this land. There's no incremental cost to purchase land here. It also recognizes, I think, the environment that we're in, where resources are limited, but it still makes what I see as capital investments in facilities for the long term, and these are facilities that have less of an ongoing operating cost burden, I think, on the town longer term. And the big thing for me is it helps to, it's a staged approach, and this gets people into the area and helps to build a buzz about what we could potentially do in this area. And I would like to, over time, see that move towards a model where, you know, some other committee or organization is potentially helping come up with ideas or fundraising ideas to help build out this park into what we want it to see it to be, because it is a challenging environment to get funding from other sources. So this gets us the beachhead into the area, and that's kind of, I think, what we're looking for. It did have very strong public support, and it's a nice piece of riverfront that we do own, that I'd love to see put to use to something like this. So I'll be supporting it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Rabb, then Hamilton, then Holiday. Sound good?
Thank you. I have three things I'd like to ask about. First of all, flexibility. Is there still flexibility with this plan? Like, I'm not saying I have all the wisdom and nor anybody else, but is it something we could all go, I mean, I've never been to that. I mean, I've been by it 100 times. I've never actually been there to say, yeah, that looks really good, but maybe you could reconsider and put this. Is there still some flexibility for movement? You know, I mean, I'm sure that you guys that on PRAC have thought about it and have looked at it and said, this all makes sense, but it would be nice to kind of have a little walkthrough in the spring and see if we could offer any suggestions or changes. Is that a possibility? That's the only, is it possible?
I got three though.
So through the mayor, and if there's the chair behind me nods, maybe she'll wanna add some more to it, hopefully I'll capture this, is the amenities proposed are just that, they're proposed. I think as we go through every year, we'll be coming back with a capital budget ask, and with that, the expectation, I'm assuming, based on what we've gone through with this initial exercise, is okay, what's stage 2 look like? And if that's something council's support of, and PRAC's brought it forward, and administration are saying this is what we think is next, or this is what we can do with the funds made available to us, we'll go from there and see where that takes us. One of the key components with regards to getting that sign up sooner than later, as soon as we get access to the site, safe vehicular access, is to get the sign up there and have a suggestion box. We know we have additional space on here. Some of the items that we proposed initially didn't sit very well or stick, if you will, with the public. So I think there's opportunity for other types of activities. But I think as you've alluded to, until you're on site, you can't have a full appreciation for what can happen on the site. So having that signboard up with a suggestion board or some mechanism where we can constantly solicit feedback for those who are on the site, I think that's something we definitely want to explore, and it's been thought about.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
That's one. Thank you very much. That's what I was looking for. The existing road, I assume that road is coming in on the existing approach that currently exists, am I correct? The oil company road right there?
So through the mayor, that road was put in place to service the Crescent Point well site.
But I'm talking about the access off of DeCalta.
Are you referring to this one
Yeah,
here?
no,
That's
The-
A new one.
yeah, right there.
Okay.
Is that, that's the same approach? We're gonna use the common approach, right?
So through the mayor, we're actually looking at doing a more direct approach. As we've got into it and taken a little bit more look at it with the project manager,
Okay.
we believe we can actually come straight in. We have the views work and the sightlines aren't an issue. And the Cal's a 50K zone, 50 kilometer zone. So we're actually, and that's part of our cost staying within that 55,000 range, is we're gonna look at seeing if we can come straight in. It provides a lot less cost and also more direct, and it doesn't provide us with a kink that becomes problematic when we try to do 2-lane traffic. So again, conceptual, as we get into the more detailed design, things are evolving. We're shooting for is coming straight in off of DeCalta, where that pedestrian crossing was shown.
Excellent. And continue.
Number 3, real crucial for me, if we talk about being a green place, there's an eagle's nest there. It's been there as long as I've been in this town. And I think I mentioned the PRAC way back when. And like when I look at Agility Dog Park and the off-leash dog park, that is probably the closest of all to the eagle's nest. So it'd be nice to maximize for 2 variables at the same time, as a biology teacher that I was would say. It would be nice to keep the eagle's nest, is what I'm saying. I think that's something that we need to, and it might require moving the off-site dog park, just because dogs could be problematic for the eagles. So please keep that in mind when you do your planning and et cetera.
I think more so, might be the lunch for the eagle.
Well,
it's
a small dog possibly.
Would be the concern I would have. I think the eagle's okay up in the tree.
Your dog is pretty safe.
Yeah. Councillor Hamilton.
I actually don't have any questions.
You're good, excellent, okay. Councillor Holly?
Yeah, we live on the river, yet we drive up to Sheep River Falls on multiple Sunday afternoons
Yeah,
to
right.
throw different rocks into the same Sheep River that we live on. So I think having access for residents is crucial, so I'm really supportive of this. But I just wanna clarify, because I've never walked, like Councilor Rabb, I've never walked the site. So with this approach and the parking lot, and hopefully some volunteers to help clean up the area, is there safe, accessible places for people to walk through the natural, you know, deer paths right now down to the river, that they would be, that kids could have access right away? That's what I'm wondering.
There's 8-foot paths. Go ahead.
So through the chair, it's a playground for kids right now. I mean, if they can get down there and see the escarpment, they'd have a field day right there. That said, we do have some hazards right now. This still has remnants of a flood that went through the area. We do have deadfall, we do have some older trees that need to be cleaned up if not taken down because they are dead or they're essentially dead. So when we get through the different phases, it's just that recognition that, yes, once that parking lot goes in and that driveway goes in, there is fairly easy access without dropping down the escarpment in an unsafe condition to come, if you follow my mouse, come down to this portion and go down what's essentially a driveway or a road that gets you into this unofficial road, if you wanna call it that. We wanna incorporate that road, if you will, as a pathway system, as a main pathway system, separating the dog park or the off-leash dog area and the beach area from, say, the pump park, or whatever other activities may happen on the east side. Part of that cleanup for the spring is to do just that, is to get our public works staff in there in the springtime before we were to move forward, bring all the equipment on site and start to tear everything up and do the driveway or the road, is to get in there and take some of that deadfall down in a controlled situation, probably stockpile it a bit and then count on hopefully some volunteers to come in, help move it or relocate it, and then we'll either haul it out or we'll stockpile it depending on what we're dealing with. We also have some materials we believe in there that are remnants from eons that we want to get removed out of there as well. So the volunteers can help with some of that. Our equipment will get in there and help pull some of that out as well to make it safe. So the intention is by the time the parking lot and the driveway are in place for the fall this year, that we'll have the site in a place where we're comfortable it's clear, and we have some pathways cleared, but we haven't gone to the full extent of laying out the whole pathway network. That'll be a subsequent phase. But safety is a priority. The first cleanup in the spring will help with that. And then as we're on site over the upcoming months, is to delineate pathways where possible. So at the time when we do expose it to the public, if you will, they'll be able to walk around. It'll be informal, there won't be anything, trail signs or anything. That's subsequent phasing when we really get down into the lower benchlands. But I think to the point where we're comfortable that the public can get in there without causing harm, unless you're a little kid and you wanna jump over the branches, which we can't do much about. But it's a playground down there.
Excellent. Thank you. Councilor Waring.
The whole aspect of this is very interesting, and I'm very supportive. My wife said I had to say that. And it was very obvious at the open houses, I went to both of them, that there was a great deal of public interest in this. One thing I did hear tonight that I really like is the fact that we're not going to build that road all the way parallel with the council, but we're going to look at taking the shortcut, which was going to be one of my questions tonight, because that's also a drainage. It's runoff water goes through there, and it wouldn't be the best place for a road. So you've got my full support. I think it's great. Looking forward to the progression and the increments each year as things develop. And if you're looking for volunteers, you can put my name on the list.
Excellent. Thank you. Any further comments? I think it's a great idea, great concept. I look forward to seeing it all develop. I especially look forward to an off-leash dog park in town. I would have a question on operations, cleaning and all that, but that's for next year, not for today. It's a great concept, a great plan, and I really look forward to seeing it solved. Be voting yes. Any questions?
Can I ask one quick?
Absolutely.
What was the overall project cost, like for the entire project? I can't remember.
It's a good question.
Was there ever one?
I don't know if there
I
was-
think that I know that there was a
Seriously.
breakdown
Individual
by
one.
per item.
Yeah, but that was based on items that might not go in there.
Okay.
Yeah, like this.
Give it a
one's
go.
100 grand.
Hit the button then.
Yes, so through the mayor, I think Councillor White's right in the sense that we didn't do a tally or a sum. We did, in our presentation, we had the costs associated with different aspects of it, depending on which way they went. And that was very high level planning. We didn't, our project manager was involved in coming up with the cost estimates, but until we're actually on site and getting into the details, even the road construction, we've come across new information over time. So we don't have a ballpark. I mean, it evolves. So I mean, it's incremental, and depending on what you put on there, and whether what our level of contributions or donations are, and volunteer support can really change that. Like you've seen, the idea of doing the access in here going from $157,000 down to 55. Now it's changed a bit, but I mean there are some ways we can look at trying to do this for as little as possible and tap our resources in-house without taking them away from their day-to-day as well. But this will be one of our first examples where we're going to tap our staff and the equipment we have in-house to do this, because we believe we have the experience and we can handle it without it taking away from our day-to-days.
Thank you very much.
I have one.
Comment over here, Wilkie?
Just to add to that, Councillor Rob's point about the flexibility of this is that, you know, I think part of it's gonna come down to what people are excited about, and in my mind, a big piece of it is what we can fundraise for, right? So I know Councillor Rad really wants to go ride that pump park right away, so when he cuts the check for that, that'll be one of the first things that we can get in there, right? So that to me, I think, is how it sort of plays out, is it's gonna have to depend on an organic kind of prioritization exercise, but getting the access is I think, critical.
Awesome. All in favor of the motion? That's unanimous, thank you very much. All right, moving on, 14.2, we have the Pathway Priorities Plan. I won't even look that way for you, Wilkie. Get a motion, Wilkie.
Can I get that motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council allocate $45,000 from the budgeted $100,000 capital budget towards development of Turner Trail as named.
All right, we have a motion. Mr. Micah, quick synopsis of this one. Go ahead.
Some of it is repetitive, so I'll just leave it in the staff report and go from there. On the same vein, when we were looking at going through exercises with the public with practice, one of the things we were doing is trying to figure out pathway priorities for the upcoming next couple of years, and provided connectivity, which we've been hearing for many, many years is a bit of a concern. And then there's the Arrowhead Park scenario with the multi-use. So now, with the $100,000 that was provided for in the 2020 budget, I had a little bit of difficulty wanting to put all that money into one of those components when we thought we may be able to put it a little bit in each. So this is our attempt at trying to spread the money where we could to the two different components. So one of the lowest hanging fruit, if you will, for pathways was what we're referring to right now as the Turner Trail. So it provides a connection off of Robert Street all the way down to Turner Drive, Turner Gate, and Ocalta to a piece of land the town owns down here, which has some natural connections to the river and along the shoreline. Some of the other paths were a little bit higher priority but came with a heavier price tag. I believe in case of Turner Trail, I think it was top 3 or top 4 preferred trails. So this is good in the sense that one of the ones we could potentially knock off our list with the 100,000 provided is this trail, which is in our top 3, top 4. Same argument with regards to how we're going to do this. I mean, we budgeted considerably more to have a contract that out. However, in talking with Public Works and the individuals involved who would be involved in doing the pathways and the construction, again, we believe we can do this stretch here that's in solid, in-house, with the same equipment, same individuals. What you see down here for the dashed line, this just shows you continuity and a bit of a looping from what's up top to down what's below. We just use the road right away. It's a fairly minimal traffic road, so you can have some pedestrian traffic on there for now, and I think would probably be sufficient and somewhat safe. And maybe over time, if it's heavier traffic, we might want to look at a bit of a shoulder. But for now, I think if we can provide the pathway down here, and then there'd just be a nice natural flow from those up top down below. Opening up the top to the below, the lower portion, I think is huge. A huge portion of our population is up top. So providing that. And for those of you who maybe, for whatever reason, went up to the cul-de-sac and spun around, there's some nice views up there. So one of the things we'll be looking at here is we're going to need some switchbacks most likely because of the incline. So to ensure it has the right kind of slope, so we're not creating a safety hazard, we'll probably have some switchbacks, and it's gonna be in this general location. So we're gonna be looking at possibly benches, waste receptacles and all that to give people a reason to sit down, enjoy the view.
Perfect, that's all we need. Councillor Waring, then Councillor Gordon.
I've been busy doing homework on this. First of all, I'm going to say the obvious. Now we've closed the golf course road. I wonder whether our priority is that priority to get a path around the golf course before we start building anything else, but we'll leave that for the moment. I took a look at the proposed Turner Trail. I've walked it. It's about 310 metres, which means it's $145 a metre to build on a thing that's reasonably walkable. What I wonder about is the bottom half of this, which is the piece that goes from Turner Gate down to the beach. Our strategic plan calls for access to the river. If I can, with a bad hip, walk down that hillside, I managed to get from Turner Drive down to the beach. That was a struggle. So, based on the costs that you put together, it would cost about $34,000 to build an extension from Turner Drive southwest to the gravel bed in the river. So I wonder whether we need to spend initially all the money on the top section of that walk, or whether we should look at trying to connect from Turner Gate down to the river.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gordon, and then Wilkie, maybe you want to comment on Councillor Waring, where you were with the committee? Yeah, okay. Councillor Gordon.
Actually, that Councillor Waring asked my question as well, because I was concerned at the bottom of the hash mark. In the summertime, I tried to walk through off of the berm, coming off DeCalta, coming around to where it then becomes the new armament on the banking, and then there's a gravel bed you can walk on. And there's really, from that point onwards, it's not well marked where to head up. So we ended up walking through the, I'm gonna confess my sin here, walking through the water treatment facility, and only to hop the fence and turn around and see no trespassing the other way. So I'm just wondering if that's not something we should consider as well, having a little bit, cause I couldn't find that trail, to be honest with you, from the riverbank up to that Turner Gate there. So we just kind of did our best, navigating through cross country, I suppose. So I appreciate what Councillor Waring has said, because it would fit a little bit better with our initiative for river access, coming down off there. I've come down off of that ledge regularly, and I'm not as, I have better mobility than Councillor Waring, but just a consideration.
I did it a year ago when I was waiting to get my operation.
Councillor Wilkie.
There's a pretty good goat trail from the end of Turner Gate
I
down,
must have missed it.
down
That's
to
what I
the,
was.
yeah, it's, now, I don't know that it's well signed, A, and B, it may be on the Struck side of the line,
Yes.
so I don't wanna,
This
you
is-
know,
this is on
confess
Struck.
my sins there either, but that's, that gravel bar down on the river is a gorgeous
It's
spot.
awesome.
Somebody hauled a recliner down there
They
last
did.
year, so it is seeing some use already. You know, and that slope is actually relatively reasonable, because once you get in there, there's actually, you know, kind of a gravel road down to where the pumps are and everything, which is another issue that we have to contend with, but that's potentially a Shruck issue. The concern I have coming down the hill is one of winter, and we see, like, you know, I look out over that trail, and there's a lot of people year-round walking down that trail, and I know that pitch gets quite slick.
It does.
I haven't been down there in the past little bit, but with the cold, I know that it's likely quite hazardous. So I get the argument, and I think we wanna give some consideration to what the highest priority is, but this to me provides kind of that river access without taking the last step. The last thing is on that last step of getting down to the river access, we talked about River Rock Trail being the connection back to Riverside Park, right? And that's very early stage, and that's gonna be a little pricier, I think, too. So I think we wanna just consider those two pieces together, I think, when it does come time to it.
Which is
Just,
the River Rock, the orange one?
it's the one that goes right along the riverbank, is River Rock Trail. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so, that would be my view on that, is that that's in conjunction with River Rock, you know, but good points. This one to me feels like it's a bit of low hanging fruit. We've got this money in the budget and we're able to put in this piece that I do think adds value of getting people down there a little safer. And again, it just goes to that river access. The one major question I had when we were looking at it in committee was, because it is going down the road right of way, just giving consideration to potential development of the road right of way down the road. Can we make sure that we sort of don't have to go in and rip it up at some point in time? And given the hill, I don't know that road right of way is necessarily gonna lead up into any new development, cause it is quite a hill there. And B, I think it's a full-size road alignment, so we can, or road allowance, so we can go to the edge of it and still be able to work within it, so.
Perfect.
Yeah, I support this one. I think it's making incremental moves, and you know, you get some people down there and they really want that River Rock Trail.
There you go. Yeah.
Maybe that's another volunteer community-led effort that we can work to get fundraised for.
I have a sense of friends of something coming off you. Is that your aura, or is that your
Love
thoughts?
to see it.
Yeah, I'll, Lana?
Oh, go ahead if you've got
Okay, yeah, I'll just say, yeah, I kinda agree. The River Rock Trail is gonna be a much larger project.
Yeah.
So to kind of phase that all into one, this is in the budget, it's clearly identified. I like the idea that, you survey that, align it to the side of the road, and you've already got one phase done. So baby steps to the big one. I think in tandem with the work that's gonna go on with Arrowhead Park, this would just be a nice split between the two, so. Councillor Hamilton.
I just wanted to say, one of the things that bugs me about pathways in Turner Valley is that they seem to not go anywhere.
Exactly.
You get on a path and then it dead ends, and you turn around and go another way and it dead ends. So I think this leads nicely towards connectivity of getting Robert Street down to Ocalta and then hopefully right down to the river. So I like to see that there's a plan in, you know, connecting that loop. I had a question, I was trying to look at it on my map, but it's not very clear. But that goat trail that we speak of, does that come to the top of the berm down at the? No, it's before the berm?
Comes into the parking lot.
Before the armament.
Okay. So, yeah, anyway, like I said, I like that it leads to connectivity. I think it's a great connection for getting foot traffic from Robert to Ocalta to start with, and eventually down to the river. So exciting to see both of these CRAC initiatives and the work that's gonna happen on them. Thanks, guys.
Holly?
I'm not familiar enough with how many people are walking from that area down, but it does worry me when we say this is only our third or fourth one on the list, and that we're, rather than saving up and waiting to get our number one, right? Because if you keep just spending it on the little things, you never have enough money for the big one. As well, I do echo Councillor Waring that if we've got the one over to the golf course needing access over there, that we might want to reconsider this. So that's, and as well, we had that $75,000 for sidewalks in neighborhoods that have never had them in our capital budget, that I just wonder if we need to relook at some of these things. So yeah, not living over there, not knowing the amount of traffic, not knowing what's going on with our number one and number two priorities, I'm not super excited about this one. But
Okay, thank you. And I think we're good. Councillor Waring, go ahead.
Just following up on, I've got no personal objection of building this pathway system that they propose, none at all. But having closed the golf course road, I'm thinking that we're gonna get a lot of public pressure to provide that path quickly. Now realistically speaking, providing the golf course are compliant and eager to help, we have already a West End right-of-way easement through the land where we want to put the pathway. Part of that is completely walkable now. There's approximately 520 metres to clean up to make that accessible. And based on the price that the public works are using, that will come out at about $75,000. Now, whether that price is based on a good gravel base that later you can put tarmac on, or whether that price is just based on cleaning up to bare earth like a lot of the trails are, I don't know. But certainly I would like to see, if we're going ahead with what's been proposed by PRAC, that our next expenditure, if you want to call it that, is the trail around the golf course, which we could do with the budget of 2021.
Thank you. Councillor Rapp?
First thing we have to do is get an agreement with the golf course, and we actually haven't even directed our administration to do that yet, so perhaps it'd be wise to make a motion to that effect and worry about that when the time comes. So I'm in favor of this. I know quite a few people do walk down that trail, and it does connect you from Robert Street, that is, down to Colton, and you can come all the way around back to the downtown, so it doesn't, I understand where Councillor Hamilton's coming from, but that actually does have a good connectivity to the Colton, which takes you back into town.
Excellent, thank you. Seeing no others, all in favor? And all opposed? There you go, perfect, that's carried. Thank you. 15, new business. Thank you, Mr. Blanket, for your time.
Thank you.
Where'd you go?
You jumped it.
No, 15.
My notion of motion.
Notion of promotion. I'm just waiting for my agenda here.
There's the motion right here.
15.
There we go.
Here you go.
15, new business, notice of motion, Councillor John Waring, if you would, sir.
Do you want me to read all of this?
Whatever you wish.
Whereas when a snow event is declared, many Turner Valley residents move their vehicles to allow for road crews to complete snow ploughing and snow removal operations. However, a number of Turner Valley residents do not, causing a reduction in the effectiveness and efficiencies of the road crew's ability to plough or remove snow. And whereas this reduced clearing efficiency also causes frustration amongst those residents who make the effort to move their vehicles, and repeated efforts for road crews to complete snow and ice control operations effectively and efficiently, and whereas the town of Turner Valley has no legal recourse to tow or ticket residents who do not remove vehicles from the street following a snow event, now therefore be it resolved the council direct administration to investigate the best options to implement a plan or process to tow or ticket residents who do not remove vehicles from the street following a snow event. And be it further resolved that administration provide a report back to council at the February 18 regular council meeting outlining these options.
Excellent, perfect.
Thank you.
All in favor?
No motion.
Okay.
No, just a notice. We don't even discuss it.
I just love it. I just love saying those words. You
Don't
know?
even discuss it.
It's my thing. Okay, general correspondence, we have none. Thank you, Councillor Waring. 17.1 Minister of Municipal Affairs letter. So we received this letter. I just, well, if no one else has comment, I wanted to just point out a few things in it from Municipal Affairs.
I've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, so did I. I just have to go this way. Alright, I feel, you know what, I'm just gonna read the whole letter out, just for the people at home that might wanna read it, or hear it. As you may know, this is from Minister Mandu. As you may know, the assessment models for wells, pipelines, and machinery and equipment, which are used to determine the assessed values of these assets for taxation purposes, have not been updated since 2005. Over the past year, Municipal Affairs has been working on a review of the assessment models to ensure new technology is accounted for. Current cost structures and industry practices are reflected and result in a fair and transparent relative distribution of taxation. The technical phase of the assessment model review, which included input from working groups of external subject matter experts, has now concluded. The initial results from the technical phase of the review indicated potentially significant shifts in assessment. As assessment changes can have consequential impacts on both municipalities and the oil and gas industry, I have determined additional engagement with industry and municipal associations is required before any final determinations are made. Our aim is to ensure any changes resulting from the assessment model review do not have an adverse impact on the competitiveness of our energy sector or the viability of our rural municipalities. It is my intention this more robust stakeholder engagement be carried out in early 2020, with final decisions on the assessment model review to be made in the spring. As a result, the changes of the assessment models will need to be deferred until the 2021 municipal tax year. In the absence of new assessment models, assessment year modifiers need to be established for 2020. These modifiers are similar to the Consumer Price Index and are used to adjust the property assessments for regulated industrial property from the base cost year in order to reflect current values. To support the budgeting process, municipalities are undertaking attached are the approved AYMs for the 2019 assessment year. AYM is assessment year modifier. In addition, a reduction in assessments for shallow gas assets will be applied for 2020 in order to continue the same magnitude of tax relief provided under the Shallow Gas Tax Relief Initiative for 2019 and enable transition to the new assessment model for 2021. These wells and associated pipelines will receive a 35% property assessment reduction for the 2020 tax year. It is my intention to apply the same criteria for this assessment reduction as were used to determine the eligibility for the tax relief under the SGTRI, which is the Shallow Gas Tax Relief Initiative. There are approximately 70,000 wells and associated pipelines in Alberta meeting these criteria. As education tax credits will not be provided, as they were under the SGTRI for 2019, municipalities will need to absorb the impact of this reduction in assessment. Municipal Affairs is completing the annual updates to the Alberta Minister's Guidelines for Taxation in 2020 to include the annual change to the AYM, so the assessment year modifiers, as well as the changes to the shallow gas assessment. For further details on the engagement with municipal associations and industry organizations regarding the assessment model review will be provided by early January 2020. If you have any concerns, please contact Ethan Bain, Assistant Deputy Minister, Municipal Assessment and Grants at 780-415-1717 or ethan.bain@government.ab.ca. Yours truly, Casey Mandu. So, I just thought it was a very interesting letter to put in to see that there's a 35% tax reduction for up to 70,000 wells, and municipalities are going to get more tax education credits loaded onto them in the future, a year from now. So, interesting. Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry.
Now you got it.
Thank you.
In looking at the attachment for the assessment year modifiers, or the AYM, the table, Turner Valley's probably most affected by pipelines, wouldn't we be? Because there was an increase in pipelines. So, 35%,
Potentially.
well, 0.49% increase, right? So I'm thinking that, well, I think it would be great for them for maybe administration to look into what the cost ramifications would be to the town. It doesn't look like the minister has provided them with that kind of information, but I'm thinking that it might not be as big of a hit to Turner Valley because the pipelines have actually increased.
Yep, potentially. I noticed that they mentioned rural municipalities in there, so that's interesting. Gonna go over here to Wilkie.
I think the motion contemplated here does ask for some clarification, so in that regard, I'd be interested to know, I'll make a motion that we direct administration to provide clarification on how this may impact the town of Turner Valley in 2020. Specifically, I'm curious just what our total amount of assessments and total tax revenue from oil and gas equipment essentially, was in 2019 or what we expect it to be in 2020 and what any impact of this may be. The shallow gas, I don't think anything that we have is, we're pretty deep here. I don't think we've got a ton of shallow gas stuff, so I don't think that's gonna hit us as bad. I know for some of the rural municipalities, like the pipelines thing is huge, at least the modifier's going up, but like just linear foot
Yep.
across some of the MDs is massive. That's a big chunk of their revenue.
Linear
So,
assessment.
so it's less of an impact, but I am interested in hearing more about what the impact on us is.
Thank you for making that motion. Can you add to it the 2021 potentially, because I think,
2020
well, they're gonna give us some, but there's gonna be more. So, it's just so we don't lose sight of it, so when 2021 rolls out, or they give us that information, then we might have it in the motion. Go ahead, Mr. Sharp.
So just a couple of comments on this through the mayor. We're still waiting to hear back. I spoke to the province today. They don't have any further insight on it just yet. So rather than putting a comeback date on this one, we'll certainly bring it back when we have a better idea of what the implications are. But high level discussions, we weren't receiving the shallow gas tax credit. So therefore the removal of that credit won't affect us. Okay. I think without speculating what the effects of this will be collectively across the province, Councillor Hamilton's assessment is pretty accurate. Most of what we're seeing here is in pipelines and other areas, and it really relates to any linear assets that we might have within our municipality. So we'll do the analysis and we'll come back for council.
Leave that as in there. Okay, perfect. All in favor? Excellent, perfect. Okay, and now I believe we're on to minutes, correspondence, Shrug.
Shrug budget.
Oh, there you go, Shrug budget. We are at,
Cindy.
now we're going to Cindy, I just gotta get that number here. 18.1, Shrug Corp, budget discussions and draft, final. Councillor Haldy.
At our last meeting, we approved the 2020 budget for Shrug. The biggest changes that you'll notice there are utilities. We were significantly over budget in 2019 on utilities, which are obviously out of our control. So we had to adjust the 2020 budget to be more realistic. So went from 60,000 to 100,000, which is a considerable cost. Other, minor one was the insurance, which, as we all hear, insurance keeps just going up. So. You can see at the bottom that it will our consumptive cost is going to be going up to $1.3. We're at 95 cents last year, so this will be passed on to member municipalities. So it's been passed the budget, so I am assuming we receive it as information. Or
We accept it as
accept it as presented, yeah. So I'll make that motion that we accept it as presented.
Perfect, thank you. Any comments, Councillor Hamilton? Then we'll go Wilkie.
I'll just add that in the 2020 budget this year, there was a requisition to all member municipalities to cover upcoming 2020 capital costs. So the town of Turner Valley decided to, instead of increasing the flat rate that we bill to residents to cover the cost, I think it was about $40,000 for Turner Valley. 45, okay. We've decided to use our reserve to cover that requisition.
45, 10.
45, 10, okay.
So that came out of Shrub's reserve?
That came out of the town of Turner
Thank you.
Valley's utility stabilization fund,
Yeah.
as a requisition to Shrug. One of the things that Shrug has learned that when it was established, there wasn't a reserve account set up. In hindsight, maybe it would have been best if all member municipalities put some money into the kitty to cover costs such as these. We do have money going into a fund that will hopefully grow and be able to sustain these types of things, but until that fund has grown, we need to continue with capital costs and cover them, and we decided to do it this way with a requisition from our reserve fund instead of an increase to our flat rate.
Alright, perfect, thank you. Councillor Wilkie?
Yeah, my question was just around that
Yeah.
requisition, and you answered a big chunk of it, I guess. I'm just curious, whether Shrek does have any kind of, asset management strategy, in place, or if they're looking at putting something in place that would help to kind of manage some of this. I know it's a big priority for us, but.
Councillor Holden?
Yeah, Shrek is still in its infancy, especially we just transferred over to the MD last year. So definitely asset management plan is something that we're looking at. It hasn't been done. The problem, they did try and be proactive, and they have been putting a % of amortization away each year. But on our books, the plant, because it was paid for by DRP, is significantly undervalued. So when they did that calculation based on percentage, it wasn't a real value. So until we have an asset management plan, we don't really know. As well, that what they're putting away right now is going to be for the large capital expenditure for replacing this plant and major parts of it when it needs to be, not for the every couple of years when a new pump needs to when a pump needs to be replaced or a major filter system. That's what the 100,000 this year is for these. We've now got the plant that's been operating for a few years, and it's these small but big capital items. So.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Rab?
Yeah, my question, I was aware of the $100,000, I think we did talk about that when we were budgeting, about the 45 coming out of reserve. Will that be something that's gonna happen again
Yeah.
every year, like this year, trying to build up your capital reserve, correct? So it'll be an ongoing request?
The amounts vary based on the year. This year it happens to be 100, and that's for a specific project. This year is a $100,000 project. I think next year was like an 85, and the year after that was a 200. So it will fluctuate, and we have asked them to try and see if they can come up with something a little more stable for us. And we can also look into considering using our MSI as well for that in the future. It needs to come down. Like we've just passed our utility rate
That's right.
bylaw. There's lots of moving parts that we're gonna get better at over time, so.
Alright, perfect. Thank you, and with that, thank you for making the motion, all in favor? Excellent, thank you. We have minutes for, who's next? Councillor Wilkie.
Yeah, I won't rehash it all. This has been largely dealt with now at council. The one thing I would point out, this was a meeting that included both Black Diamond and Turner Valley's Parks Committees, and there'll be things coming forward to increase that integration as we move forward as well. So that was nice to see. It's always good to work with our neighbors, and they've been doing some very similar work along public engagement. We've got some similar things coming out, some differences, but just we need to align things, and that's what the plan is going forward. So nothing else there, just make a motion to accept for information.
Perfect, thank you, all in favor? Excellent. And Sheep River Library, I'll make a motion to accept for information and make it a motion. Nothing really sticking out there. Our biggest thing, as I mentioned before, is we increased our member fees, and that's about it, really. So I don't think there's going to be too much there. Councillor Rabb?
I just have one question, how did that Literacy for Life go, like you were looking for the funding, how'd that go?
Yep, that's all in the works. I believe end of this month they start up again. So
So it's staying in?
yes,
Yeah.
it's staying in Turner Valley, and we're hoping that sets a precedent for other communities who are benefiting from it, and maybe they'll go out of their way to assist as well for their own communities. But we're very excited to have made that motion as a board at the library.
Great.
And
You're
retain
trying-
their services. They're I can't say enough good about it, so I won't go on to it again. But that's our big thing right now.
Weren't you getting funding
And
from?
our update for still standing, of course, is all good,
Again, that'll air maybe next October, November, we'll know better next year, by the time they get there, so. With that, all in favor for information? Excellent, and I see the word adjourned, and I will say it, adjourned. Thank you for attending, and have a good evening.
We're out before 8 and